Good morning, guys. Please remain standing. We will be reading the scripture in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 18, and Matthew chapter 5, 27 to 30. You shall not commit adultery. You have not heard that it was said that you shall not commit adultery. For I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye makes you stumble, tear it out and throw it from you. For it is better to lose one part of your body than for the whole body to be thrown into hell. If your right hand makes you stumble, cut it off. Throw it from you, for it is better to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. You may be seated.
Good morning once again, everybody. Just want to recap. Oh, oops, forgot my clicker. Just want to recap for everybody. It feels like we haven't had EM worship service in a while. At least I haven't been here in a few weeks. We had Unity service, and then I was on vacation. So I kind of want to recap where we are, where we've been. So a few weeks ago, we talked about honor your parents. Remember that your parents are the first members of the community that you are in contact with when you're a baby. They're the first members of the community that you interact with. As a baby, as a child. Your parents are the ones who, as far as the Bible is concerned, what the Bible is talking about when they talk about honor your parents is your parents are the ones who teach you about the covenant of God. Basically, the covenant is that Jesus came down and he taught and he did all this stuff, and then he died on the cross for our sins and rose again 3 days later, and we, as believers in that, are brought into what's called a covenant relationship. In other words, a relationship based on God's promises and what God is going to do, what God has done already and what God is going to do. And your parents are the ones who, as far as the biblical concern is they're the ones who teach you this. And so the covenant relationship continues, the covenant community continues. If parents don't teach their children about Jesus' works on the cross, there is no covenant community after a while because nobody would know, right? And so it's up to the parents to teach the children, have this continuation of the covenant community. We talked about how we honor our parents through this idea, this Jewish word called kebed, which is to make heavy. That's the literal translation, but it's also to take seriously. So we talked about taking our parents seriously. The opposite of that is taking them lightly, not really caring about what they say or do or whatever. But kebed means to honor them by really taking them seriously, really listening to what they have to say. But that's really hard because our natural tendency is always to rebel against our parents, right? My dad has been staying with me the last few weeks, almost over a month now. And, he's trying to be helpful around the house, and he's, saying stuff like, oh, this light here, I think you could change this or that fixture or something, right? And after a while, in my heart, I'm like, Dad, I know you're trying to be helpful here, but, I'm always like rebelling against it. Like, that light's fine, Dad, don't worry about it or something, right? He's trying to be helpful, he's trying to help me out and stuff. He sees, I have a house now and stuff to take care of it, but So I have to take him seriously at what he says. He's trying to help me. He's trying to be a good dad. But my natural inclination, just my sinful nature, is just to rebel against everything that he says. Right? He says one thing, I'm like, nah, Dad, don't worry, whatever, right? And I'm pretty sure that you've experienced similar feelings towards your parents. Maybe they're giving you some good advice or something, but in your heart, you're like, you don't know what you're talking about, right? Why are you bugging me about this, right? So that would be taking them lightly, or not taking them seriously, or not honoring them. Okay, so we talked about that. And then we talked about, a few weeks ago, you shall not murder. And we talked about that's the protection of life within the community. Okay, that within our covenant community that we have as brothers and sisters in Christ, that we have a responsibility not to harm each other and not to kill each other. Okay, and Jesus says, don't even get angry or hate each other, because that leads down to wanting to kill somebody, or at least even in your mind wanting, or in your heart wanting them dead or out of your life, basically, when you get so that angry at somebody. And Jesus teaches us to reconcile with those that we have a problem with. Okay. So when I got to this part of the 10 Commandments, of you shall not commit adultery, it was like a challenge for me, because I'm like, what am I supposed to talk about? Because first of all, we don't have that many married couples here. I think we have like less than 6 or 7 married couples, right? And then we got a lot of young people who may not even know what the word adultery means. It does not mean being an adult or trying to be an adult. It means cheating on your spouse with somebody else. Okay? So I was like, what am I going to talk about when it comes to this adultery thing, right? I talked to a lot of my peers. I talked to a lot of pastors that I know and mentors and things, and I asked them, what should I talk about? And the natural thing that they said was, talk about staying pure in your life, avoiding things like pornography, avoiding, impurity, sexual immorality, that kind of stuff, right? And that was the majority of what people told me to talk about. I was like, well, yeah, I could talk about that, and young people can benefit from that, stay away from internet porn and all that kind of stuff, right? But I feel like there's something else going on in the commandment about adultery, that there's something else that God is trying to get at when it comes to the prohibition against adultery. Because in the last 2 commandments, he's put it in the context of the community, right? First of all, you honor your parents, because your parents are the ones who your first contact with the community, basically, and they're the ones who teach you about the community, the covenant community, right? And then do not murder, do not get angry, do not hate your brother and sister, do not basically have any, do harm, physical harm against somebody in the covenant community. So the idea of adultery, I figured it must have something to do with the covenant community. In other words, the community that Jesus has brought about through his actions, that we are all a community, we're all brothers and sisters, we're all a community because of what Jesus has done on the cross. Think about that. We're not a community because we're all like Asian people or Vietnamese people that just kind of like to hang out with each other. We're not a community because we're all kind of, or you all, I'm old now, but most of you are all like around the same age, so you're a community. We're not a community because we all live in the same area, and so physically, we're kind of geographically a community. No. We're a community because God has brought us together under the lordship of Christ because of what he's done on the cross and the promises that he's given to us, that our sins are forgiven if we believe in him, and that we shall have eternal life. We're a community because that is what brought us together, that promise, that covenant. So the idea of adultery, I figured, has to do something with the covenant community, because the other two commandments had to do with the covenant community. So it's not just about, hey, stay pure, don't do anything immoral, because God doesn't like that and it's icky anyways, right? That's not what there are passages in the Bible that tell us to avoid sexual immorality and to avoid doing this and that and stuff, right? There are those passages, but this particular passage, I feel, is a little bit different because it's in the context of the covenant community. Honoring your parents because they raised you in the covenant community. Protecting the life of your brothers and sisters within this covenant community. So this prohibition against adultery, against cheating on your spouse, in my heart I felt like it also has something to do with God's covenant community. So I want to talk about this. Like I said, adultery is cheating on your spouse. I found this picture here, and I actually, believe it or not, I actually saw something like this going on at a youth revival meeting. If you can believe it or believe it, I was like sitting in the back, like standing in the back, kind of like hanging out with the cool audio visual kids, like DT's doing, and there's this couple sitting in the very back row, right? And they were all like this, right, or whatever, hugging whatever. But then I noticed like there was a third wheel there. There was a third guy there. Another guy, and the girl was like holding his hand like this, right? And I was like, what is that all about, right? Come on, we're at youth revival meeting here. What's going on here, right? This image here kind of reminded me of that experience, that time that I had at that youth revival meeting. And I thought about that, and I thought, wow, that went on at a youth revival meeting. Why did that bother me so much? Well, it should bother you because, first of all, right, people are cheating on each other, whatever, but at a youth revival meeting, it kind of adds like this double, something else, there's something wrong going on here, right? And that something wrong is that we, as a covenant community, we are responsible for one another. There is what I call, and I've used the phrase before with y'all, the ethic of responsibility. That we have a responsibility to one another, okay? I have a responsibility to you to protect your life, to take care of your life, to honor that, but also to honor the relationship that you are in, okay? And you have a responsibility to me to honor the relationship that I am in with my wife. Okay? And it doesn't matter how old or how young you are, you can honor that relationship. You can protect that relationship, okay? And I'll get into that. But the idea is that I am responsible for you and you are responsible for me. I am responsible for the well-being of my neighbor's marriage. Jesus says, love your neighbor. If your neighbor happens to be a married person, then you have to love that person's marriage. You have to honor that person's marriage. You're responsible for that person's marriage. The well-being of that marriage, I should say. It's not just about me protecting my own marriage by not cheating on my wife, right? Yes, that's the prohibition. Pastor Lynn, don't cheat on Elise, because it's part of the 10 Commandments. Yes, but it's also about I trust you not to harm my marriage. I trust you to protect my marriage and to honor my marriage as well. Okay? And that is an ethic of responsibility. We are responsible for each other. I take responsibility for you, you take responsibility for me. Okay? And so we don't have a situation where we're doing this at youth rallies or youth whatever, right? And so that is what I call the ethic of responsibility. That is what everybody in this room can do, is look out for one another's marriage. Honor and respect one another's marriage and relationships. Okay? I want to get into a little bit about the importance and the role of marriage in order for us to understand why marriage is so vital to the covenant community. And I realize y'all ain't married, most of y'all ain't married, so you're probably thinking like, Pastor Lynn, this is like 10 years in my future, this is 15, this is 20 years in my future. Why do I gotta think about this now, right? School is right around the corner, I'm thinking about that, right? Why the big deal with marriage? And I kind of want to get into that, okay? First of all, is this idea that God established marriage in the book of Genesis, and it's two people, male and female, and they come together, they leave their parent, they come together, and they shall become one flesh. Okay? One flesh. So you have that concept that God has established this. And so when you have a third person involved, when you have, somebody else that's going to come into this relationship, well, you're already going against something that God has established. Okay, that God has established. He's instituted this idea of marriage. To him, it's good. Why is it good? It's good because it's the idea that you have a helper in your life to accomplish the things that God wants you to accomplish. If you remember back in Genesis, what did God do? God created Adam, and God said, Adam, I created you. Here's your job. Here's your vocation. What I want you to do is to name the animals, right? That was his job, to take care of the garden and to name the animals. You're probably thinking, name the animals, how hard could that be? That's a chicken, that's a hog, that's a fox, that's whatever, right? But you got to think about it, and he's thinking like, what should I call this animal? So he's observing it, he's looking at it, right? He's got work to do, and then he's got to take care of the garden and all this other stuff. And God looks at him, and he says it's not good that he's alone. He needs a helper. He needs somebody to help him so that he can accomplish his task that I've given to him. So he creates a helper, Eve, his wife. Okay. So that sets the pattern of why marriage is important, because the helper, the person that God puts into my life, is going to help me to accomplish the things that God has set out for me to accomplish. And I can't do it alone. I've been in ministry a long time. I started out in ministry as a single guy, a bachelor. And I was able to do some things good in ministry and stuff. But now that I'm married, I realize like how important it is for me to have that partner in my life to provide me with strength and encouragement, to motivate me when I'm not motivated to do stuff, to, lift me up, to be critical when I do something wrong, to help me, with the children, with the house and everything like that. My wife, to me, is invaluable to this ministry, okay? And this is the pattern that God has set. So all of the spouses, you see, like I said, we don't have that many married couples in our English ministry. As you guys grow older, we hope we get more. But a married couple can do exponentially more than a single person can. A married couple can do exponentially more than a single person can. And this is what God has planned out from the beginning, and that's what he ordained since Genesis. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9 and 12 explains how a couple can do a lot more than just one person. Okay, it reads, two are better than one because they have a good reward, okay, for their work, their toil. Okay, and it says, and though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. You're probably thinking, a threefold cord, what is that? Isn't that a third person? Now it's like, I thought it was supposed to be two. No, a third cord. The third cord is God. So if I have me, and I have my wife, and I have God, it's not easily broken. We can accomplish so much. But then, if somebody else were to enter the picture, if somebody else were to enter that picture, it would destroy that marriage, and then we can't accomplish anything. Okay. So this is the pattern that God has set out from the start. And this is what he wants. This is how he's ordained it. And so we have the married couples in our ministry, and you'll notice that a lot of them are very involved in the ministry, and we have some who are also engaged, soon to be married, and they're also involved, they're also leading. They're doing a lot for our ministry. They're doing a lot for you, right? And they're able to do that. We are able to do that because they, as a couple, nurture each other, support one another, care for one another in a way that a single person just can't do alone. And I've experienced trying to do ministry by myself, and it's nowhere near as effective as when I have my wife with me. Like I said, if the marriage is broken, if the marriage is if there's a threat to the marriage, then there's a threat to what the person can accomplish for God. Proverbs 6:27 says, "Can a man carry fire next to his chest and his clothes not be burned?" Right? Think about that. If you had like a fire, like, you know, let's say you're at a campfire or something, can you take a fiery log and just kind of hug it like this and not be burned? No, you're going to be burned, right? And so this is the warning against adultery. It's the same thing. If you commit adultery or in a marriage relationship and there's an adulterous person, there's some cheating going on, someone's going to get burned. Someone's going to get burned. And the end result is the breakup of that marriage. And the result from that is God's work being hindered. Okay. Another pastor says, "He who commits adultery lacks sense. He who does it destroys himself." Okay, so the person who commits adultery, the person who cheats, what you're really doing is you're destroying yourself. You're destroying yourself. Your own ability to do what God has tasked you to do in life will be destroyed. Okay, and I'll get into that a little bit. Let's see what Jesus has to say. We read some in the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus is speaking, and he says, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I say to you that anyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart." What is Jesus saying here? Jesus is saying, it doesn't take the physical action of cheating on somebody for you to actually be an adulterer or a cheater. You just have to look at somebody with that intent in your heart, and you're already, in your mind, you are cheating on your spouse, on that person that you're supposed to be with. Now think about that for a moment, because, I, as a married man, if I look at a young woman or whatever, it doesn't matter if she's married or not, with that intent, then I've committed adultery against my wife. I've cheated against my wife, right? And so so we have to protect one another in our covenant community from this happening. Jesus says this, he ups the ante. He says, you don't even have to do the physical act of cheating on somebody. You just have to look at somebody with the wrong intent, with the lustful intent, and you've cheated on your spouse. Why does he say that? See, because the Pharisees were saying, okay, look, I have never cheated on anybody. I've never physically slept with anybody other than my wife, right? So according to Moses' law, I've obeyed the law. I'm good, right? But Jesus says, well, what about your intent in your heart? Who have you been looking at? Who have you been eyeing, right? And why are you looking at that person that way? What's in your heart? What's in your mind? Because you've already committed adultery. And the Pharisees, they were about personal piety. They were about looking holy to other people. So they said they could stand up, on the street corner and say, yes, I have never committed adultery, so I'm a sinless person. I'm all good, right? But Jesus says, no, you're not all good. What's in your heart? What's been floating around in your mind? What are your thoughts about this person? Because Jesus is saying, it's not just about you and your own personal holiness, it's about the community, the covenant community. Because when you look at somebody that way, when you have that intention in your mind and your heart, you are already tearing at the fabric of the covenant community. Like if I knew that some guy was looking at my wife that way, I'm not going to like that guy. I'm not going to trust that guy. I don't want that guy to be around my wife, right? That intent, that what that person has done has already torn away at the fabric of our covenant community. And if I were to look at somebody else's wife that way, I don't even have to do the act of cheating on them. I just have to look at somebody else's wife or spouse or whatever that way, and they're going to be like, Pastor Lynn, man, that guy, he's something weird with him. He's creepy. I don't want him around my wife and stuff like that kind of stuff. My doing that has already torn away at the fabric of the covenant community. And see, that's why Jesus says what he says. You don't have to actually do the act. You just have the intent in your heart, and you're already destroying the covenant community. You've already sown the seeds of distrust within the community. Nobody's going to trust you. Nobody's going to like you. They're going to avoid you, that kind of stuff. If I'm the pastor, how am I supposed to do ministry? How am I supposed to serve y'all and serve God if that's the way that I am, looking at people like that, right? It's impossible. So that's why Jesus says what he says. That's why Jesus ups the ante. He says, you don't have to actually do the act of cheating on somebody. You have the intent in your heart already. You have the intent in your eyes already. You have the intent in your mind already. And already you're going to, because of that, you're destroying the covenant community. Because of that, you can't do your function within that covenant community. You can't do the work that God has set out within that covenant community. So I want to just get into some real practical application. This has all been kind of nice theory and understanding what God has been saying and stuff, and the whys of it and everything, and the ethics of it and everything. I just want to give you guys some practical things to do or things to avoid, right? And this applies to everybody, not just the married people in the room, because if it was just the married people in the room, then I would just dismiss everybody else and, it'd be like a seminar. But first of all, there we go. Consider all tech public property, okay? Your phone, your computer, your laptop, your tablet, wherever you go online, consider it public property, right? The problem is that oftentimes we think of our phones and stuff as private. This is my phone, whoever I'm texting, right? And no one else, don't bother with it, why, who are you texting? Don't worry about it, right? That kind of stuff. No, if you think of it as this is personal, this is a public thing, you can look at my phone, you can read through my emails, you can read through all my texts, you can do whatever, right? It's public. If you all want to say, all right, Pastor Lynn, I want to look at your Facebook messaging and I want to look at your text messages. Go ahead, there's my phone, look at it, right? See what I'm doing. Right? It's just like, this presidential election, right? Everybody's bugging Donald Trump. Hey, we want to see your taxes. We want to see your tax return, right? Why? Because they're thinking in his tax return there's going to be some bad activities, maybe some, illegal activities or whatever, right? Some shady activities. So I want you guys, all tech. And for those who are married, those who are getting engaged, that kind of stuff, those boyfriend and girlfriend, hey, tech is public property. You're sitting there, you're like, no, my phone is my phone, right? I don't want my girlfriend to look at who I'm texting, or I don't want my boyfriend to see who I'm Facebook messaging and stuff. You're opening the doors to bad things, right? Tech equals public property. Just think of it that way. Whoever you're texting, and not just the texting or Facebook messaging or whatever, whatever you do, right? Even gaming, who are you gaming with, right? Oh, I'm gaming, don't worry about it, I'm just gaming, right? Whatever, right? There's so many avenues now. So many avenues for you to cheat, for you to contact somebody you shouldn't be contacting, all right? When I talk to parents about tech, I basically say it's like your children are inviting people into your home that you might not want in your home. Right? Every time you're texting some friend or whatever, or you're Facebook messaging, or you're doing whatever, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever, you're basically inviting somebody into your life, inviting somebody into your home, inviting somebody into your house. You might not want them there. Other people in the house might not want them there. Okay, so tech equals public property, just remember that. Secondly, avoid private meetings. What I mean by this is, if I gotta meet with somebody, like even for a counseling session or something, let's say for example, some young lady comes up to me and says, Pastor Lynn, I'd like to meet with you, I have an issue with whatever, and can I meet with you? I will say yes, but if you don't mind, I would like to do it with somebody else there, or at least somebody else on the outside of the room, right? We're gonna keep the door open. No private meetings, okay? Just kind of keep this in mind, and you should be good, right? Sometimes it's unavoidable, right? Sometimes it's unavoidable, but try to avoid, okay? So, and thirdly, guys, don't look, don't touch, right? Don't look, don't touch. It's not like sometimes you go to a store and it says, look but don't touch. It is don't look, don't touch, right? It's kind of hard sometimes because we guys, we're very visual people, right, guys? And what I usually do is I don't even look a young lady in the eyes. Young ladies, if I'm looking at you, if I'm talking to you, you really pay close attention. I'm not even looking at your eyes, I'm looking at your eyebrows. I don't even want to look at your eyes, right? That's how paranoid I am, right? I'll look at your eyebrows. You ask me, hey, how's her eyebrows? Ooh, she's got nice eyebrows. Or no, she's got to do some plucking, right? Whatever, right? I look at eyebrows, I look at foreheads, I look at whatever, right? If like, because I know the window of temptation. So what do? I look at my shoes a lot. I know exactly what my shoes look like. I'll look at the sky, group of young ladies walking by, I'll be like, that's why a lot of times young ladies are like, hey, Pastor, hey, what's going on, right? I don't want to open up windows, right? I don't want to get into trouble. Don't look, don't touch, right? Just look at their eyebrows. Guys, eyebrows, you should be okay, all right? And this is just the way that guys are wired, the way that God has made us. We're very visual people. Okay? We're wired to notice the visual things. All right? Ladies, protect, don't project. What do I mean by this? Protect, don't project. What happens a lot of times is when y'all are ladies, when you have issues with a relationship, you go and you talk to your girlfriends, right? And I don't want to stereotype. I already kind of stereotyped the guys, but that's true. But girls, what do you girls do when you're in a troubled relationship? Your relationship is in trouble. You get on the phone or you go hang out with your girlfriends. And then what happens? They tell you about how much your man sucks, or you tell them about how he sucks, how he's terrible, how he's a horrible guy, and the vortex of how horrible he is just kind of keeps building and building and building until he becomes like the worst person in the world, right? That happens. I knew the situation where this young lady was unhappy with her husband, goes and talks to her girlfriends. The girlfriends talk about how horrible he is and stuff, right? Projecting that negativity onto this guy. But one of the girlfriends actually liked that guy and was actively trying to break up their marriage. So she was telling her, oh yeah, you should dump him, he's a horrible guy, whatever, right? I would get out of that marriage if I were you, right? And so she did. And then what happens? This quote unquote friend swooped in and took him. Ladies, protect each other's marriages. Don't project negativity onto that marriage. If you are going to your girlfriends and stuff, and this is something that ladies typically do, right? Guys don't do it as much, right? We get together, we talk about sports and fantasy football, right? Girls, you get together and you talk about your relationships, okay? That's a completely natural thing to do. But don't project negativity onto that already vulnerable relationship. You see, that relationship is already vulnerable. And if you project more negativity onto it, you're just tearing at that relationship. Okay? So protect one another's marriages. Protect one another's relationships. Don't project negativity onto it, because then it just becomes this swirling vortex that just never stops. And then once in a while, it is okay to talk about your husband and how inept he is or how he doesn't understand anything and stuff. You just kind of vent, and that's okay to vent because we all need to do that, right? But if you are the one who is receiving the vent, protect that person's relationship, that person's marriage. So just say to that person, I understand he's a moron, he's a dummy or whatever, he doesn't get you, he's this, that, the other thing, but you know what? At one point you were in love. Think back to your love. You still love him, don't you? You still want to be with him, don't you? Let's talk about how we can protect this relationship. Let's talk about how we can get you guys on the right track instead of this negativity that swirls out of control. Next is keep the hearth burning. Keep the hearth burning. What's the hearth? The hearth is basically, back in the day, you would have basically like a fireplace in the house. And the hearth would be the place, the central place in the house to cook food, to keep everybody warm, that kind of stuff, right? You have to keep it burning all the time because once that dies, then it's really hard to get it going again. Keep those fires in a relationship going. Keep those fires going. Keep the hearth burning. And for guys, this is really hard because, you know, sometimes we're not all that romantic, especially after you get married for a few years. You forget about the flowers, and you forget about the cards, and you forget about all the stuff you used to do when you were dating, the opening the doors for her and stuff like that, the umbrella in the rain, that kind of stuff, right? We forget about that. We're insensitive. I'll admit it, right? But we got to do stuff to keep the hearth going. And this is where you single people can help us married people, actually, right? This is where you single people in the community come in. Because sometimes when a married couple, you know, they need a little help sometimes, right? I mean, we had two married couples in our community who've had babies. That's stressful on a marriage to have a baby. You single people, you can come beside them. How can we help you? What can we help you with, right? You guys want a date night? We'll take care of your babies. You guys go on a date night. You guys want to just go get coffee together? We'll take care of your kids. You guys go and get coffee together, whatever. Spend a couple hours together. You guys want to just watch TV together, whatever. We'll take care of the kids. You guys watch TV together, whatever it is, right? My friends, you as single people, you can help us married people in so many ways. Even here at church, right? Help us out in so many ways. Just encouraging us, saying a good word, to say, hey, you know, I love how you guys come into church, you guys help us out so much and stuff, right? Just words of encouragement. Helping us out. Helping us to keep that fire going. Okay? I knew of a church, every October, they spent every Sunday in October, because October is, I'm a pastor, so it sounds kind of weird for me saying this, but October is Pastor Appreciation Month. It's coming up. And they would just do little things for their pastor to help them in their, not their pastor because it's like, oh, you're a pastor, you're a great guy, here's a raise or something. But it's just like, what can we do for your marriage, pastor? Right? And I think all of us who are married in this room would love for single people to come alongside us, right? And help us out in our marriage once in a while, right? Just help us out. Especially us guys, because again, for some reason we lose the romantic ideas and stuff. We don't know what's romantic anymore, right? And just to remind us, hey, pastor, you should get some flowers for your wife or something. Hey, pastor, you should do this or that, or, you know, whatever, right? Or, hey, anybody married guy, okay? And finally, the last thing to think about here is that Satan prowls. Satan prowls. And what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, if you want to open that up. It says that, you know, our enemy, Satan, prowls like a lion, looking for the weak, looking for the vulnerable. You can imagine Satan prowling this building right now, looking for the weak, looking for the vulnerable, looking for that weak relationship, that marriage that's weak, looking for that marriage that's frayed, looking for that couple that their marriage is in trouble. And he prowls, and he's going to pick, and he's going to say, how can I destroy this marriage? How can I destroy this person's marriage? How can I destroy that person's marriage? How can I destroy this person's relationship? How can I destroy that relationship? Why does he want to destroy our marriages? He wants to destroy our marriages because he knows you destroy a marriage, you destroy a church. You destroy a marriage, you destroy God's covenant community, and that's what Satan wants to do. Imagine if I fell to temptation. Imagine if I became an adulterer. It wouldn't just affect me and Elise and our family. Of course it would affect me and Elise and our family. But it would affect you guys too. I couldn't be your pastor anymore. You wouldn't have that trust in me. Satan knows this. Satan attacks me all the time. Satan is attacking all of our married couples all the time. Because he knows. He knows if Eli and Jen, if something were to happen there, how can Eli lead praise? How can we trust him to do his work, to do the work that God has set out for him to do? If something were to happen with Dean and his wife, if something were to happen to Michael and Nung, how hard that would hit our church community. And that's what Satan wants to do. He's prowling, and he wants to take advantage of any weak spot that we have, so we can't let him do that. My friends, whether you're married or whether you're single, you have a role in protecting the marriages in our church. It doesn't just affect them and that couple or that family. It affects the entire church community. It affects the entire covenant community of God. And it affects all the things that God has set out for that person and for that church community to do and to accomplish. That's how important it is for us to have strong marriages. That's how important it is for you to see your role and your responsibility in these marriages. And if, even in the home, you as a child in the home, maybe some of you are like junior high or high school, you're like, how can I help out? Well, you can help your parents. Parents are under a lot of stress. We adults, we're under a lot of stress. If you can just do something like, just do the dishes, just mow the lawn, just do a little bit of something, just to relieve some pressure from your parents. Maybe that can even help them out in their marriage. The Satan is prowling. He's on the lookout for weak families, for weak marriages, and he will take advantage of those situations to tear apart the community of God, to tear apart what God is trying to build up. And we can't allow him to do that, right? Let's stand at this time. And I just want to give you guys a few moments, silent moments, to think about how you can help our married people. How you can help even your parents at home in their marriage. How you can help them to relieve some stress, or how you can help them to keep the hearth going, keep the romance going. How you can help your brothers and sisters who are married in their marriages. And brothers and sisters who are married, think about strengthening your marriage and how important that is. Think about your role in this church and how important it is that your spouse encourages you, lifts you up, builds you up, and is there for you so that you can serve this community. Let's praise God.